आगामी गंभीर। Get the facts, not the bombast. On the 26th of March, dynamic pricing, Baloch separatists, Gravitas cuts out the clutter. Gravitas keeps calm when others scream. Gravitas brings news to life. Weekdays 9 p.m. IST, 3:30 p.m. GMT. Gravitas. Seeing is believing.
This week on Tech It Out, we tell you how artificial intelligence is helping people regain voice. We show you new AI-powered TVs that can help improve your viewing experience. And find out how drones can help tackle deforestation. This and more on WION World is One at these times.
This week on WION E-Club, we tell you about India's history at the ongoing Cannes Film Festival.
At last,
Find out all about the Bridgerton franchise as the new season of the hit show starts streaming online. And meet the Indian actor-producer duo Rajkumar Rao and Nidhi Hiranandani as they talk about their latest movie, Shrikant. All this and much more with me, Isha Hanspal, on WION at these times.
Hello and welcome. You're watching WION World is One. This is World DNA with me, Hem Korsura, and here's what we've lined up for you on the show today. Israeli troops and tanks push further into contested areas in North Gaza and Rafah with reports of dozens of Palestinians killed or wounded. The dead body of another hostage recovered. The deepening divide in the Israeli war cabinet. Minister Benny Gantz threatens to quit unless Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu sets out a post-war plan for the Gaza Strip. Moldovan Prime Minister Dorin Recian speaks exclusively to WION, says Moldova's concerns on Russia's atrocities in Ukraine hold a strong message for the whole of Europe. Cites strong collaboration with EU. "140 Pakistani students returned from Kyrgyzstan. Visuals show some of them injured in the mob attack on South Asian students there on Friday night. Kyrgyzstan says the situation is calm and under full control. Intense rainfall and flood situation in northeast France eases. Cleanup operations underway as authorities monitor the threat of rising waters. Israeli forces with their armored tanks continue to push deeper into congested parts of the northern Gaza Strip. Dozens of Palestinians, local residents as well as medics have been killed or wounded in this process. Troops took more ground in Rafah in the south. Israel's incursion into the holdouts of Palestinian militant group Hamas in Rafah, it's alarmed Washington and Cairo. 800,000 civilians have fled the town of Jabalia, where about half of Gaza's 2.3 million civilians had taken refuge. Israel's military announced that it recovered the body of another hostage. Ron Benjamin's remains were located along with the bodies of 3 other hostages identified as Shani Luke, Amit Boskila and Itzhak Galanter. He was among more than 250 people held captive by Hamas since the October 7th attack.
אני מעדכן הערב כי גופתו של החטוף הישראלי רון בנימין, זיכרונו לברכה, חולצה גם כן במבצע המשותף של צה"ל ושב"כ. רון, בן 53, נשוי לאיילת, ואבא לשי וגיל, יצא בבוקר יום שבת ה-7 באוקטובר לטיול אופניים עם חבריו סמוך לבארי. רון נרצח באכזריות על ידי מחבלי חמאס, בעיכול מפלסים, וגופתו נחטפה לעזה.
In northern Gaza, Israeli forces and Hamas clashed at the Jabalia refugee camp overnight, fighting the fiercest battles in the narrow alleyways of the camp. The Israeli troops re-entered the town this week after pulling out, claiming that the Hamas fighters had regrouped. They carried out what they described as the precise operations against terrorists and infrastructure. At least 10 people were killed as Jabalia refugee camp came under heavy Israeli bombardment. Israel's paratroopers brigade made its way to the Al-Trans area central to the refugee camp, waging fierce clashes with the Palestinian militant group. Several others critically injured from the Israeli airstrike were pushed to the Kamal Adwan hospital in Beit Lahia.
بدأوا يعني لكل أحرار العالم، لأي حد عنده إنسانية، ذرة إنسانية مجازة بتصير عندنا، أطفال بتتقطع، أطفال يجنبوا من النساء. أنا مش فاهم، أنا بتقاتلوا في دولة عظمى أنتم، والله مدنيين كلهم بروحوا.
Gaza's Al Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis is once again treating the wounded after the MSF resumed its activities. Last month, mass graves with more than 300 bodies were discovered inside the Nasser Medical Complex, sparking horror and grief and drawing condemnation from the United Nations. Gaza's largest functioning hospital in the southern city of Khan Yunis had ceased operations after being raided by the IDF back in February.
شو اسمه المصري كل الهان بتاعته ايش بدك تسوي؟ بدك تعمل شيء ولا كفر لما يصير هيل؟ لا
Ces fermetures, ces évacuations d'hôpitaux ou de structures de santé permanentes handicapent grandement la délivrance des soins médicaux à la population palestinienne.
As Israel's bombardment resonates in the densely populated Rafah, prospects of peace seem far-fetched. Talks mediated by the United States and its regional allies, Egypt and Qatar and Cairo, to secure a ceasefire in Gaza have hit a stalemate. And cracks are deepening within Israel's war cabinet. Now Minister Benny Gantz has threatened to resign unless Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu sets out a definite post-war plan for the Gaza Strip. In a televised address on Saturday, Gantz threatened to resign from the government if it does not adopt a new plan in 3 weeks' time for the war in Gaza. Gantz, who is a centrist member of Israel's 3-member war cabinet, called for urgent realization of 6 strategic goals, including bringing back the hostages, toppling the rule of Hamas, and establishment of a multinational civilian administration for the territory.
עם ישראל מתבונן בך, ועליך לבחור בין ציונות לציניות, בין אחדות לבין פלגנות, בין אחריות לבין הפקרות ובין ניצחון לבין אסון. אם תעדיף את הלאומי על האישי ותבחר ללכת בדרכם של הרצל, בן גוריון, בגין ורבין, תמצא בנו שותפים למאבק. אבל אם תבחר ללכת בדרכם של קנאים ותוביל את האומה כולה אל תהום, נאלץ לפרוש מהממשלה.
Gantz's comments just come days after another war cabinet member, Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, urged Prime Minister Netanyahu to state publicly that Israel had no plans to take over civilian and military rule in Gaza. Netanyahu has dismissed the call, saying the washed-up words would mean defeat for Israel. But the fact is, Gantz's exit would leave Netanyahu hugely dependent on far-right allies. Netanyahu is under growing pressure on multiple fronts. Hardliners in his government want the military offensive on Gaza's southernmost city of Rafah to press ahead with the goal of crushing Hamas. And the ultimatum from within his cabinet is further cause for worry.
ביטחונית ישראלית להקים מנהלת אמריקנית, אירופאית, ערבית ופלסטינית שתנהל אזרחית את הרצועה ותניח בסיס לחלופה עתידית שאינה חמאס ואינה עבאס. להשיב את תושבי הצפון לבתיהם עד 1 לספטמבר ולשקם את הנגב המערבי.
Opinion polls suggest Netanyahu would be replaced in elections, with Gantz the most likely candidate to be the next prime minister. The survey, published and conducted on over 543 respondents, revealed that war cabinet member Benny Gantz is leading against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu when it comes to the choice of Israeli Prime Minister. Gantz garnered 45% support, Netanyahu 35%. Public protests within Israel against Prime Minister Netanyahu and his government grow louder by the week. Hundreds of anti-government protesters blocked the highway in Tel Aviv, calling for fresh elections and more headway for release of hostages from Hamas captivity. Shouting slogans and holding up placards, protesters said that they held Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu responsible for bringing the hostages home safe and accused him of putting political interests ahead of all humanitarian needs. The demonstrators held placards emblazoned with slogans demanding a Gaza truce deal. They expressed angst and frustration as IDF found the bodies of 4 hostages in Gaza, including one on Saturday. Relatives of one of the slain hostages expressed grief, saying time wasn't on the family's side. Parents of German-Israeli Shani Luke said that they can finally lay their daughter to rest after her body was found.
Everyone should have the privilege of...
Ukraine is struggling to hold the eastern front as Russians advance on the cities in the region. Kharkiv, Ukraine's second largest city, and the surrounding region are relentlessly targeted by Russian attacks. For the Ukrainian troops still awaiting military supplies from the United States, the question is, can they hold out till it arrives? Here's a report.
For Ukrainian gun commander Alexander Kozachenko, the long-awaited US ammunition can't come fast enough. His unit's US-supplied M777 howitzer, which once hurled 100 shells a day, is now often reduced to fewer than 10. Gunners like Kozachenko in the Donetsk region are desperate for more 155mm rounds for their Western cannons that had given them an edge over Russia earlier in the war. Resurgent Russian forces are mounting multiple attacks across the eastern Donbas region and along the country's northeastern border. The drive has marked an inflection point in the conflict. Russian forces are making inroads that could come to threaten several big cities in the east, which serve as key military hubs for Kyiv's war effort. Russian cannons are now easily within range. The closest Russian position at the start of 2024 was about 20 kilometers away. According to open source maps, the front line now is just 14 kilometers away. Ruins of homes, apartment blocks and administrative buildings are a common sight in towns and cities. Evacuation requests are pouring in. Ukraine has roughly 1,000 kilometers of front lines to defend in the east, north and south. According to many of those fighting, even if Ukrainian forces can hold out till all the American ammunition and weapons get through to the front, the challenge ahead remains daunting. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
With Russia's war in Ukraine showing no signs of de-escalation, countries in Europe have been forced to assess their defense capabilities and prepare for war eventualities. Moldova, which shares a 1,200-kilometer-long border with Ukraine, is eyeing a European Union membership. Moldovan Prime Minister Dorin Arishan spoke exclusively to WION's principal diplomatic correspondent Siddhant Sibul on the EU factor and other issues. Listen to this.
What's your biggest concern or fear with the war at your doorstep? And additionally, do you foresee the war coming to an end anytime soon?
The biggest issue is the atrocities that Russia is committing in Ukraine, killing people, killing men, women, older people, children. That is the biggest humanitarian problem. Obviously, the war next to our border is a problem for Moldova as well in economic terms, in social terms. So this is a problem actually not just for Moldova, but for the whole of Europe, and I would say also for the whole of the world, when the international law is not respected, and when a country is allowed to brutally intervene and to kill people in another country.
So there are reports which say that your country has signed a pact with European Union, a security pact, which will see more military engagement, which will see more security engagement with Brussels. Can you just talk about it, the pact, and do you think that it's a change in your stance, in your neutrality stance?
In the current environment, Moldova is strengthening its defense capacity, and we understand this not only as a responsibility for Moldova and for the Moldovan society, but also for the region. This is why we have strong collaboration with the European Union, but also with other allies and friends in order to strengthen our defense capabilities. We are very next to the war. Moldova actually has 1,200 kilometers of border with Ukraine, where Russia is waging a brutal and unjust war against Ukrainians. And this is why it is our responsibility to protect this border, not only for us, but also for our EU member states.
Nepal's Prime Minister Pushpa Kamal Dahal, popularly known as Prachanda, is scheduled to seek a vote of confidence in Parliament on Monday. It will mark the fourth confidence vote since his government was formed in December 2022. Now, the vote became necessary after coalition partner Janta Samajwadi Party withdrew its support. The JSP holds 12 seats in the parliament. The party suffered a split after its leader, Upendra Yadav, recently resigned as Deputy Prime Minister and Health Minister. Under Nepal's constitution, the Prime Minister must seek a vote of confidence within 30 days if a coalition partner withdraws support. Despite the departure of JSP, the ruling coalition still holds a majority. Prachanda needs the backing of 138 lawmakers in the 275-member House of Representatives to continue leading the government. Prachanda's support has waned in previous confidence votes, dropping from 268 votes in January 2023 to 157 votes in the most recent test. The opposition, particularly the Nepali Congress, is reportedly working to mobilize JSP Nepal and CPNUS to challenge Prachanda's government. The Nepali Congress is currently disrupting parliamentary proceedings. The party is seeking the resignation of Deputy Prime Minister and Home Minister, who is embroiled in a controversy over misappropriation of cooperative funds. This is Prachanda's third stint as Prime Minister. While he has been vocal about wanting to make a difference, he also has acknowledged his failure to deliver. Prachanda changed his partners twice in the last 18 months in March 2024, when he once again joined hands with his former partner, CPN-UML leader KP Sharma Oli, and walked out of the Nepali Congress. Now we shift our focus to the expectations of bountiful Indian monsoons. So which Indian stocks are likely to benefit from a heavy monsoon season? We look at this and more in this next report.
The stock market is showing signs of life for Indian companies with a strong foothold in the country's rural areas. This comes as investors are placing bets that the country's abundant monsoon rains that would improve agricultural harvests and increase demand in the countryside. After 2 years of devastating unseasonal heat on India's agricultural sector, manufacturers of motorcycles, farm equipment and fast-moving consumer goods, they have risen in anticipation of above normal monsoon rains in 2024. Several large consumer goods companies have forecast better business and sales volumes in rural regions that are on the rise. The FMCG gauge underperformed the overall index in each of the previous 6 months. The larger stock market has shown a fantastic surge in recent years. In addition, rains might help the government combat inflation by reducing food price increases. This is good news for India's economy as a whole and business profits. According to experts at Morgan Stanley, cyclical businesses are still leading India's growth, and that should result in defensive sectors lagging. Still, investors' appetite for stocks tied to the rural sector has strengthened amid growing signs that India's investment-propelled growth may be losing steam. Bureau Report, WION World is One.